views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. Tonight's program is about grassroots in the Bronx, figuratively and literally. Everyone knows about the Bronx's two largest parks, Pelham Bay and Van Cortlandt Parks. They have advocacy organizations to help create programs, do maintenance, advocate for funding, and address a myriad of problems that tend to come up. But what about the borough's smaller parks that are sprinkled across our borough? They are no less vital, and in many cases, even maybe more so, because they are, again, figuratively and literally grassroots to dozens of Bronx communities. Who advocates for them? Tonight we'll meet two Bronx Park caretakers and find out what it takes to advocate for local parks and what it takes to care for them and maintain them as cornerstones of so many Bronx communities. I know you know what I'm talking about. Please join me in welcoming the Acting Executive Director of Friends of Mosholu Parkland, Elizabeth Quaranta. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
And the Founder Director of Loving the Bronx. She is a fierce advocate for Virginia Park Playground, and Hugh Grant Circle. It is Nilka Martell. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Well, Ms. Quaranta, how are we doing at the Mosholu Parkland? What's going on?
Well, let's see. We should start off with the positive first.
Yes, absolutely.
You know what? The Mosholu Parkland area has grown from a parkway to a parkland within the past 5 years from our little local community, residents, advocacy. The parkland is a lot greener. There's a lot more trees, a lot more care. It also has some issues, but we have created some pocket gardens with the help of Parks and Recreation. And we also have some more activities and events that we have grown for the past, 5 years.
Why did you get involved? I mean, you kind of really established this notion of what you said. It's not a park. That's funny.
I didn't want to move again.
It's not a parkway. It's parkland.
Yeah.
What motivated you to get started?
We moved to this area many years ago, and rather than move again, every community has its goods and its bads. So why move? Why not improve? Right? Move. You shouldn't be moving. You should be improving.
How long ago was that?
This was about 10 years ago. I've been in this community, and we started saying that we wanted to stay here. We had invested here as a family. We got to know our neighbors that had different issues about the parkway. So we decided that we were going to get together and start housekeeping our community. And what brings us together is parkland, the benches, the paths, the recreation.
You could view Mosholu Parkway, and I have drove across it a number of times. You could view it as just a thoroughfare.
Yeah.
But you had the vision, well, wait a minute, here is really kind of usable space. And people dictated that because they came out on weekends. There used to be, before they put trees down, there used to be, athletics. People would play soccer on the midland there.
On the median.
The median there. And what was like the first thing that you said we ought to do to be able to begin to get first of all, how much acreage is there? How much land do you know?
You know what? We cover from Jerome Fortrain on Mosholu Parkway all the way down to Webster Avenue. So we cover the 14 enclaves.
Wow.
That's what we cover. So from the Fortrain down to Webster is where the Friends group cover. We have a lot of buildings and community in the area. We can't do all of Mosholu, but we can do where the families are.
You know, maybe I made a mistake at the beginning saying these are small grassroots parks. This is not small.
This is not small.
I mean, Marston
yeah.
Parkway is a couple of miles long,
Yes,
right?
it is. Yeah.
Wow. And so, is the basic thing of sanitation, was that like the first thing to say, you know what, pick up the garbage?
I think it started out with litter, but I think what we wanted to do was basically get community together and then bond, because you can't do it alone. One person or yes, one person can start, but you need a group. So we really wanted to bring out the community and get to know each other. So we did a meet and greet. We literally got a table out there, and we had people sign up. This goes back 5 years.
5 years, wow.
We got a table where people signed up.
Did people come out enthusiastically?
No, they came out with, "What are you doing?" And why
boy,
do
is
you
that a
care?
Bronx thing.
Yeah, and why do you care? And so
So you had a selling job.
we had a selling job. Yeah, we had a selling job of, this is where you live, and if you don't want to move, help us improve. Yeah.
And so it actually grew, and now, I mean, you have a Friends of Mosholu Parkland Facebook page, and
A
if you
website,
a website, and if
yeah.
you call to action, so to speak, and say we're going to have, you know, a cleanup day or something, you get people.
We get people.
Wow.
We do. We really have. You know, our mission has grown. We went from a 3-person to a whole organization. We're still volunteer grassroots, though. None of us get paid for what we do.
Right. And it's funny because Nilka's going,
Yeah, none of us get paid. Yeah.
So, Ms. Martell, let's talk with you. Now, we're going to get to Hugh Grant Circle in a second, because it's, I guess, non-traditional to think of that. I mean, it's the circle where the number 6 goes by. What made you say, I want to deal with Virginia Playground and Virginia Park?
Well, I've lived on Virginia Avenue my entire life, and in 2011 we started a block beautification project. So we cleaned up a dead-end street, and we adopted 23 street trees. But the park is right across the street, both Hugh Grant Circle, which is located...
Before we move on, what does it mean to say we adopted 23
that means that every week we would go out there, we would remove whatever garbage was in the tree pits, and we would twice a year mulch the trees, and between May and September we would give each tree about 20 gallons of water.
Wow.
So
you say we, you, and a couple of friends?
It started out just myself, a neighbor, and my 2 children, which at the time they were 12 and 14, they're adults now. And we had some neighbors that were like, you know, exactly the way Elizabeth explained, like, why are you doing this?
How
Nobody
long ago?
cares. This was 2011. Those trees
Wow,
are mature
38
now. They're 3 stories high.
When you do something like that, do you have to like call up, hello, Mr. and Mrs. City, we are going to do this, or did you just say, well, we're just doing it?
We actually went out there and started cleaning it up, and then we had to get permits and insurance. And, you know, like Elizabeth said, a lot of people look at the work we do and they don't understand what goes on behind the scenes.
And why did you do? Well, I mean, Elizabeth said I didn't want to move. I thought that was kind of adorable.
Well, I think it's the
somewhat
same
reality.
premise. Like, I've lived there my entire life, and I just looked out the window one day and I said, well, why does it look like this? And we're here, and this is the neighborhood we live in.
You know, I have to tell you, this is somewhat of an aside, and I sit in this seat every week. I hear this sort of thing from the people of the Bronx now more than ever over the last quarter century, that people are saying this is our community, this is our neighborhood. We keep waiting. It's not coming. We're just going to do it ourselves.
That's right.
That's right.
And so then what was the next thing after the trees?
We started hosting It's My Park Days, which are programs through Partnerships for Parks. And we started doing them both at Hugh Grant Circle and Virginia Park. Later on, we adopted Chief Dennis Devlin Park, which is not too far away, and then Virginia Playground. So there's a lot of work that goes on. It's not just cleanups, it's not just events, but there's a lot of meetings that we go to, meetings with politicians, with, you know, figures in Parks Department.
Parks officials tell me and have told me in the past that, you know, we welcome community groups to do these kinds of things. Do they really? I mean, in other words, or do they say, you know what, you're always asking us to
Gary,
do more?
It was a process, because when we approached them in 2011, they didn't know who we were. I mean, we were just, you know, people that lived in the neighborhood that wanted to care for the park. It took us about a year to actually gain the trust of park employees. And now we pretty much, you know, we maintain the park. So I think that once there's, you know, like a vetting period and Park sees that you're serious, they will work with you.
From what to what? Like, what was the park, or you want to start with Virginia Playground and I guess the Virginia Playground and Virginia Park? What were they and what are they now, or are we still a work in progress?
Well, okay, so
And we're going to show
the
pictures,
first,
by the way,
the,
and you guys know that, and we're going to show pictures.
the two parks that we really started working with were Hugh Grant Circle and Virginia Park. And they're very unique in that they're green spaces that are fenced off. So even though I lived in the area my entire life, I never realized that Hugh Grant Circle was a park because, again, it's a green space that has a huge fence and you can't gain any access to the park. So fast forward, we adopted the park in 2012. We started doing different cleanups. By 2016, we started doing weekly programming. But the parks, both parks, Virginia Park and Hugh Grant Circle, was selected for the Parks Without Borders initiative, which means that $8 million of investment is going into both parks to completely renovate them, and we will have access. So it's almost like gaining two brand new parks.
What do you do with that money?
Well, we don't do anything with that money. The city
But I
puts it
understand.
towards, it's a complete renovation. Virginia Park will have the fences lifted, and we had someone from Community Board 9 come and study the traffic patterns. So at the scoping meetings and the designs is very reflective of how the community uses the park.
Talk is cheap. Let's take a look. Okay, so now I know that we have some pictures that the Friends of Mosholu Parkland submitted, and so let's see. What do we got? First one. Okay. This is a problem that Ms. Quaranta tells us about. If you look closely at your screen, you can see that there is smoke pouring toward those trees. The issue is barbecuing.
Yeah. So as all-American as that is, it is all-American in a designated area.
And Mosholu Parkland is not.
Because it's a parkway. So as much as we want to say that it is parkland, and it's still a parkway, and we need to follow DOT regulations.
Who enforces that?
The Parks and Recreation enforces that. The police department.
Effectively?
I
Hesitate. Note, somebody note, she hesitated.
Yeah,
Somewhat.
somewhat,
All right,
yeah.
let's look at the next slide, which is, I thought, very interesting that I guess you folks put together, which it says charcoal kills trees. That's one of the issues.
That's one of the issues, yeah. So this is a pilot program that the Friends want to come up with. We're still working out the kinks, but we would like to do some public education with the community that's in the area.
What I love about this particular slide, and you can't quite see it, unless you really look close at your screen, you're telling people where they can barbecue.
That's
You're not
right.
saying don't have fun.
Right. We don't want, we want you to have fun. We want you to have the best time, but it needs to be in the right areas.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, what do we got next? Let's see. This, I told you this before the show when I saw this. So this is a pathway, folks, that goes, I guess, from, junior high school 80 all the way down. And obviously it's well used. Obviously people have, quote unquote, adopted it.
Yeah.
Boy, it would be nice to have it look like a real walkway. Really?
Yeah, it really needs to. So we have hundreds of students that come down and up this hill. It's actually, you can't really see it, but it even gives you a hint that there's a beach in the area, but there's really no beach because it's so eroded. It's so eroded that
let's take a look at the next one.
it needs work.
And I really want to. This compared, I love this. This is the way we should look at our borough. This, it almost looks like summer camp on the left. When we used to go to sleepaway camp, and then the kids would walk through the woods. But of course, it's kind of ridiculous. Has there been a request? Is there money out there? What will it take to get steps?
So I'm
that it's
glad you
appropriate?
asked that because this is we did a workshop with a nonprofit, a visionary agency, and they helped us see what could be possible on the parkway in different areas. And obviously the picture on one side shows that this is a hill that we use all the time. So the friends, the community, we all got together and we came up with a vision, which is going to be.
And I think I want to show the full slide on the next one, which is that full vision.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is something that we share with the Community Board 7.
And what will it take to have this vision become reality? Are we anywhere near that, or is it, oh goodness, keep
So,
talking?
well, This vision was actually shared with the DOT Commissioner of the Bronx. It was shared with Councilman Cohen in our area. It was shared with CB7, and it was also shared with the borough president.
And I'm waiting to hear back. And
I'm waiting to hear back.
Okay. So we're in that process now.
We're in the process of them looking at it.
And do we know what it might cost? The whole
We
plan?
don't know.
Okay.
We don't
So
know.
let's do this real quick around the table. Can we just vote it in? All right, who votes? I vote. I'm sure Nilka, what are you being shy? Elizabeth? Yeah.
I have
All
two
right, we've
hands
done
up.
it. All right, well, you'll let us know how it goes. All
Yes.
right, now let's move further south. Now, the parks we were talking about, I didn't want to take it for granted. We're talking about the area near Parkchester, right?
Correct.
That, folks who don't know, Hugh Grant Circle and the Virginia Playground and Park. So what do we got? Nilka had brought us photos, and we're going to see those photos. Now, this is, I want to just give you a chance to mention it because I know it's close to your heart.
Yes, so we also do community building through the use of parks and open spaces, but that encompasses a lot of issues within the community. We also have a history component because Morgan Powell was one of our original members, and in his passing, we host a tribute tour. So, the Bronx history is very important to us, in the scope of the work that we do. So once a year, and, in other years, we've had more walking tours. We do host free walking tours.
And in answer to the question, do people come out? Yeah, they
Absolutely.
come out. All right,
Absolutely.
next. What do we got?
So this was a grant that the park received from Uniqlo. Our installation in particular is called Daylighting by Lovey Pignata. So it is showing the close proximity between Virginia Park and the Bronx River, which is just a 15-minute walk. So what we like to do is we like to team up with other organizations, to have the community know about these organizations. So we teamed up a couple of times with Bronx Soul, and they led run walks from Virginia Park to Starlight Park.
All right, keep it going. I have to tell you, I love this because these are Bronx people taking control of our communities. And if you want to see what that looks like, this next photograph is exactly what that looks like.
Yes,
What is
this is Virginia Park, and this was part of New Yorkers for Parks Daffodil Project. So every year we go out and we plant daffodil bulbs in the spring. They come up, and it's part of a 9/11 living memorial.
And these are just Bronx people who had the same attitude that both of you had and said, this is our community, and it's what I said earlier, we're not, because nobody else is doing it for us, so we're going to do it ourselves. And it builds community, cleans up the park, right? It does all
Absolutely.
these things.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? All right. And what I like here is the relationship of the park to the urban environment.
Yes.
Got to have it. All right, keep going.
We also do, our work is more borough-wide. We kind of engage and we get involved with other friends group to help build capacity and let people in the Bronx know the work that's being done by other groups. So this one in particular is annual events that we do at the West Farm Soldier Cemetery, which is a landmark cemetery that's normally closed, and Parks Department does open it up for us every for Veterans Day and Memorial Day, and we get students to come out and clean up the cemetery.
Here's a terrible question. How busy are you with this? How much time do you spend? I know you don't count it because if you did, you probably would not be very happy.
It's a full-time job. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have a part-time job with a very flexible schedule, but I don't think that people realize that the work that we do is, I mean, it's about 30 hours a week.
That's why I asked the
and we
question.
don't get paid. We love what we do.
Well, I don't think you should say that. Maybe one day they ought to
Yes,
come up
correct,
with
correct.
some compensation. All right, what's next? We got something next?
That was Daylighting Again at Virginia Park by Lovey Pignata. That was the first artwork that we have. We have a current one.
Now, let's give Lovey credit. When you say by her, what do you mean by her?
That was her concept, her idea. It's really high. The blue stripes that you see here is the 174th Street Bridge. So if you actually leave Virginia Park and you walk on the Cross Bronx, you'll hit the 174th Street Bridge. So it was very strategic how she did this. In the other picture, you'll notice that the canoe is in water. And artists they're just amazing. Lovey knew that there was a drain there that didn't drain. So she strategically put the canoe there so that after the rain, it would look like the Bronx River.
And I think the next one is this like a before and after? Let's see that next one.
That one is there now. That was the second year of the Uniqlo grant.
So this is the park we had just seen from a different angle?
Yes, yes.
And this is painted on the ground?
On the asphalt, yes. Now that artist is Kara Lynch, and that mural is still there to this day. The park is being renovated in the fall, so they allowed her to keep it there.
Let's just interject with that. When you say the park is being renovated in the fall, is that like kind of a regular park renovation, or did you have to advocate for
We
it?
did. We did. There was Mitchell Silver, which is the current commissioner for Parks Department, came out with this pilot program called Parks Without Borders. And it was really examining parks throughout New York City that were very similar to Virginia Park, where you have like a huge sitting area and then the green space is fenced off. So we got the community to vote for it. It was the first time that it was an online voting process. So we teamed up with, the people from our groups, our members, but we also worked with the community board and elected officials.
We should mention it was 2016,
Yes.
Parks Without Borders. And I think there were two winners. I think the other was
Yes,
Van
Cortlandt Park.
But that to me speaks volumes. It's really the kind of the dynamic I set up at the beginning and said, well, we have the big parks, and nobody would deny anything about Pelham Bay and Van Cortlandt Park. But I think it was, maybe we should give a little applause. It was a tremendous achievement to do that. And you've had the results of that, and you're looking at it in this photograph right here.
Yes.
All right, I think there may be one more. Am I right about that? One or two more? Let's see. There are a couple more, yes.
That one was actually really interesting. Parks Department gave us permission to do a planting. You see where the fence is?
Yes.
On the other side. And then the day of, they showed up and they said, oh, no, you can't plant there because it's a reserved lawn. I mean, can you imagine?
Reserved by?
I have no idea. So we did the planting, but we told them this is, an area where there's a lot of pedestrians, and it didn't even last 2 weeks. We had about 35 volunteers come out that day and plant that. And
How do you do the outreach? Is it all through social media?
social media.
And people really do come out?
They do, they do.
Fantastic. Keep going. It's a couple of ones that wrap it up.
We also host the Sing for Hope piano. This is the third year that we've had it, so we have it for 3 weeks, and we bring different artists to come and play, and we do different events around the piano.
I saw one of these in Norwood at some point, right
yeah,
nearby, right? Diana?
the Oval.
Yes,
yeah,
Williamsbridge Oval.
Williamsbridge Oval.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you have it, you're going to have it, I guess it's there now through the summer?
No, it's only there for 3 weeks in June. This one we had 3 years ago. This artist is actually a Bronx artist, Laura Alvarez, which we do work with the BX Arts Factory, so it was just kind of nice to have her piano there.
And people come and sit down and play?
Absolutely.
And then this last one, I happen to like this last photograph.
Actually,
you can explain it, but then I'm going to tell you why I like it.
okay. So this is part of the New Yorkers for Parks Daffodil Project. So these are the bulbs that we plant every fall, and then in the springtime they come out. But it's really a 9/11 living memorial.
What I just love about this is right behind it, obviously, is Hugh Grant Circle, and you can see, I mean, this is our borough, this is our city, our urban environment, and even just this simple act, I would say simple, I'm not doing the work, but even this simple act, look what it does for it. That's why I happen to love this picture. Well, just tremendous. This is what I want to ask, a very fundamental question, and each of you can have a whack at it, and that is the notion of funding. Because everything you want to do, you want to go create a new vision for it. You want to plant daffodils or whatever it is. There's always funding. So, what's the process? Is there a process? Is it, please drop it down from the sky?
No.
Is the city difficult? I mean, we know the parks are completely underfunded. That goes without saying. So how do you do
So
it?
there's a lot of work involved when it comes to getting money. So we reach out to agencies like Citizens Committee that have been wonderful with their grants. We have reached out with Partnership for Parks and City Parks Foundation. We have reached out to councilmen. But that's not even enough.
We know it's not enough.
That's not enough.
But what are the most successful avenues, and what part of what we're trying to do, if we can inspire other neighborhoods, if they are involved in this, to learn something about it?
Use all the
or,
resources that come across
That's
your
what you
way.
just
And
listed.
the other thing is you have to also think outside the box. So we're starting to do fundraising ourselves by creating things, by showing a skill to some of our community residents, to our youth, so that then we can sell product that's associated to what we do.
You know, as difficult as that is, what I just love is what it also takes to build all those parks, and that is it's a way of bringing people together. Again, I'm going to repeat what I said, having sat in this chair for, a quarter century. We're seeing more of that in the Bronx, in just about every Bronx neighborhood, than ever before. And I think maybe that's why it's a stronger borough. And for you, what do you, just the whole notion of funding?
We were fortunate enough to get 2 cycles of PEI funding through our city council member, but that's never enough.
Who's the council member?
It was, at the time, it was Annabelle Palmer.
Okay.
But, you know, I was talking to Elizabeth before, you know, and I think that the reason why we're involved in so many friends groups in the Bronx is because you often you find that parks groups are fighting and applying for the same monies, and there has to be another way. So at Loving the Bronx, what we're doing, we were fortunate
So in
enough
other
to
words,
get
excuse me, if you're going to apply, it could be that Elizabeth is applying for something similar, right? Is that what
Right.
that's
Yeah,
what you're saying?
yeah, it could.
And the last thing you would want to do is take something
is
away
take
from
something
her.
away. Yes, yes. So now that brings me to something, right? So friends groups are great because they will advocate for one park. Our premise at Loving the Bronx was to look at the Bronx Parks system as a whole, because we understood in getting involved with these different groups that this is the major challenge, getting a pool of money and everybody fighting for the same thing.
You know, I don't know if we could do this and count how many groups like yours. I mean, I'm aware of some. I mean, I could list a couple of parks off the top of my head.
Dozens.
There are dozens.
Dozens.
So now we're going to create here on Bronx Talk an association of Bronx Park advocates. You know, right? That is
great.
what you were suggesting.
That'd
and
be
so
great.
rather than have you got lucky this month or this year, or you
Right.
had a council member who was really useful, and you had a council member who was useful, but then they didn't, so they didn't really get, or maybe they didn't have the technical knowledge how to do it,
Yep.
right? If you had one big budget and then you do it based on need or size or something like that. Wow.
Yeah.
We're solving a problem, right? We just
We
solved the
are,
problem.
yeah.
That would be a fascinating concept. So what's next? You're going to advocate for the redesign?
So we are advocating for the redesign, but we're also spreading out a little bit from Mosholu, and we're doing more public education, including in the homes. So we're doing health, environment. So yes, because it's not just the Parkland, but it's also bringing in.
And you do that in the park?
We
or-
do that in the park. We do that doing tree pit care outside the park, walking distance to Mosholu.
Wonderful. I'm checking all the boxes.
Yeah.
Works for me on everything. And what about for you? What's next?
This year we got a grant to incorporate and to file for a 501c3. So next year we'll be launching a campaign, a 2020 campaign. So we'll be looking for people to donate $20.20 on a monthly basis.
So it's education and funding.
Yep.
Well, that's how we did it. Listen, Elizabeth Quaranta from Friends of Mosholu Parkland, thank you so much for everything you do. And of course, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Gary, for
And
having
Nilka
us.
Martell, who is, I can't list the number of parks, but you're just out there doing it. Thank you, and thank Loving the
you.
Bronx.
Thank
you
you.
can find them both on Facebook
And Instagram.
And
Instagram,
and,
yeah.
and that's how we're getting people of Bronx together. You're just doing great. We in BronxNet, I know we all support everything you do.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, if you have further questions or comments on anything you heard on tonight's show or anything going on in the Bronx, then email them to us at bronxtalk@bronxnet.org. Send us a tweet at BronxTalk. Post them on our Facebook page. You can get to them. You can get to me. I'll help you get to them. Our producer is Helen Greenberg. The directors are William Guzman and Nick Marrero. And we will see you next week. And we will say